horrifying and mysterious cases in Korean history, with victims ranging from 13 to 71 years old, all women, and the number of victims exceeded 10 people. The attack process usually involved kidnapping first, then sexual assault, and finally killing them ruthlessly. This entire case shocked Korean society for many years, and it was the Hwaseong serial murders. You are watching the Hwaseong serial murders that shocked Korea, the mystery of the killer who was interested in women wearing red, on the Crime Channel. And as usual, if this story leaves an impression on you, don't hesitate to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to stay updated with the most classic cases. The time period of the crimes spanned 5 years from 1986 to 1991. Except for 1989, the perpetrator committed crimes almost every year, and all occurred in Hwaseong District, Gyeonggi Province. On September 15, 1986, Korean police received a report of a body discovered in a field. The victim was a 71-year-old woman. The lower part of her body was naked. Her hands and feet were tied behind her back, and the cause of death was strangulation. 1 month later, at 8 p.m. on October 20th, a 25-year-old woman was attacked while walking to the bus stop after a date. She was left in a water drain, had multiple chest wounds, and the cause of death was strangulation with socks. At the crime scene, police found several cigarettes and a milk box, presumably discarded by the perpetrator after the act. In November, a woman was dragged into a field on her way to church. The perpetrator tied her hands and feet and sexually assaulted her. Then he asked her where she kept her money, and when he went to the location to take the money, she managed to escape successfully. This woman was the only survivor in the Hwaseong serial murder case. On December 12th, a 24-year-old woman, after having dinner with her husband, took the bus alone from Suwon to Hwaseong while her husband had to return to his company. That was their last dinner together, because 131 days later, her body was discovered on a levee just 50 meters from her home. By then, the body had severely decomposed, and all belongings were stolen. Her underwear was pulled up to her face, and the cause of death was also strangulation with socks. She was the latest victim to be discovered among the victims in the Hwaseong series of murders. Just 2 days after this woman went missing, on December 14th, a 23-year-old female employee, after having a date at a cafe in Suwon and taking the bus home, also went missing. Witnesses said they saw her get off the bus, so it could be concluded that she disappeared on the way from the bus stop to her home. Her body was found the next day in a rice field. Her hands were tied, and there were traces of the perpetrator's semen at the scene. The cause of death was also strangulation. Test results showed the perpetrator had blood type B. Within 3 months, 4 murders and sexual assaults occurred consecutively in Hwaseong. However, at that time, Hwaseong police had not connected these cases and conducted separate investigations. Hwaseong was not a large and developed city, so the police's investigative capabilities were limited. But because these cases occurred so close together, had similar methods of execution, and Hwaseong had never experienced such incidents before, police began to suspect these cases were related. On November 10, 1987, an 18-year-old female student disappeared after taking the bus home at 8:50 p.m. after school. The next day, she was found in a field in a condition similar to previous victims. At the crime scene, police discovered several hairs believed to be from the perpetrator. At that time, DNA technology in Korea was not developed, so they could only determine the perpetrator had blood type B, which was almost useless in the investigation. Because the victim was only 18 years old, very young, the case caused major shock in the Hwaseong community. And finally, police realized these cases might be committed by the same person. Nevertheless, clues about this serial killer remained very scarce. A coincidence was that the killer only targeted women wearing red clothes. Because a series of previous cases remained unsolved, residents in Hwaseong began to panic, making police feel very pressured. Therefore, Korean police summoned investigation experts from all over the country to Hwaseong to assist. Perhaps this information scared the perpetrator, so for the following period, he remained silent and didn't commit any crimes. Police even tried to trap the killer by having female officers wear red clothes as bait. but he remained completely silent. After 4 months, on the evening of May 9th, a 30-year-old housewife, carrying an umbrella, was preparing to leave home to pick up her husband but was unfortunately attacked on the way. Her body was found with the upper body naked, and the cause of death was strangulation with underwear. After more than a year, on September 7, 1988, a 54-year-old housewife left a store at 9:30 p.m. to go home and also went missing. Her body was later found in grassland by the river, hands tied with underwear, mouth gagged with socks and handkerchief. The cause of death was strangulation, and under the victim's body, police found many fragments and soil particles. Unlike previous cases, this case had a witness, a bus driver. At that time, the bus passed near the crime scene, and the driver suddenly saw someone waving for the bus beside the field. The driver stopped to let that person on, and he saw the person's lower body was covered in mud. After getting on the bus, he kept wiping mud off his shoes, spoke vulgar words, and even asked the driver for a lighter. Therefore, the driver had a strong impression and even clearly saw his face. He looked very normal. About 20-30 years old, small in stature, about 1.65 to 170 meters tall. Based on the driver's description, police completed a sketch of the suspect, but he seemed to have no intention of stopping. On the morning of September 16, a 13-year-old girl was found dead by her mother in her own room. The cause was strangulation. However, the perpetrator was caught due to hair left at the scene, and it was a 22-year-old man named Jung-yoon who secretly loved the victim's high school sister but had broken into the wrong room, then sexually assaulted and killed the young girl. He wasn't the serial killer, but the method of crime was similar. Police suspected Yoon was just copying the serial killer, meaning the Hwaseong serial murders had negatively impacted Korean society. In 1989, for some reason, the perpetrator didn't continue his actions. Then on November 15, 1990, another 13-year-old girl was killed while walking home alone at 6:30 p.m. The next day, her body was discovered hidden in a pine forest, in a condition similar to previous victims, but this time, the lower body parts of the victim were stabbed with pens, forks, and spoons. Semen found on the socks tied around her neck and wrists showed the perpetrator had blood type B. On April 3, 1991, a 69-year-old elderly woman was killed on her way home at 9 p.m. in a pine forest about 150 meters from her house. The cause continued to be strangulation with socks, and there were traces of semen at the scene. This was also the last case among the 10 serial murders in Hwaseong that police had announced. But in reality, the number of cases didn't stop there. Information about subsequent cases was not disclosed by Korean police. Based on the perpetrator's continuous method of killing, criminal psychology experts speculated that the perpetrator was abused as a child or abused by women. So he extremely hated women. After analyzing the perpetrator's crime timing, police noticed that the crimes usually occurred on holidays, winter breaks, or exam periods. Therefore, it could be deduced the perpetrator was about 20 to 30 years old, very likely a local high school student or college student who committed these crimes. The perpetrator didn't erase traces after committing crimes, so police thought the perpetrator's education level and intelligence were not high. The Hwaseong serial murders shocked all of Korea. Police summoned 205 investigators, investigated 21,280 suspects, identified 570 DNA sequences, 180 hair samples, and 40,166 fingerprints, but still had no results. During the investigation, many suspects and police officers couldn't handle the pressure and committed suicide. On April 2, 2001, 10 years had passed since the last case in the series of murders, and the perpetrator still hadn't been caught. Meanwhile, the statute of limitations for cases in Korea was only 10 years, so victims' families lost their right to civil litigation against the perpetrator. On April 3, 2006, the 15-year period to prosecute crimes for the last case among the 10 cases finally expired. This meant that even with full evidence, even if the perpetrator confessed, he could not be legally prosecuted. Normally, when a case exceeds the prosecution period, continuing investigation according to law has no meaning anymore. Therefore, all government documents and papers related to the case would be destroyed. However, this case was too big, so under public pressure, Korean police decided to keep all related documents and papers. In 2007, Korea amended the criminal procedure law to extend the prosecution period for murder cases from 10 years to 25 years, and stipulated that all cases occurring after 2000 would apply the 25-year period. Unfortunately, this draft only applied to cases occurring after 2000, and the Hwaseong serial murders were not within the scope of application. Many decades passed, and the Hwaseong serial murders remained unsolved. Thus, it was considered one of Korea's 3 biggest unsolved cases. However, on September 18, 2019, an announcement from South Gyeonggi Province Police once again shocked the country. Police declared they had found a suspect in this case because the DNA of a prisoner serving in Busan prison matched the DNA from underwear in 3 of the 10 Hwaseong cases. Among the 10 cases, 1 was confirmed to be committed by a copycat. So among the remaining 9 cases, 3 cases were confirmed to match DNA. The remaining 6 cases weren't non-matches, but rather the DNA had been destroyed and couldn't be extracted. The prisoner that Korean police revealed was Lee Chun-jae, 56 years old. In December 1993, he argued with his wife, after which she angrily left home and stayed at her sister's house. A month later, on the January 13, 1994, Lee Chun-jae called his sister-in-law and asked her to come to his house to clear out all her sister's belongings. Around 7 p.m., she came to his house, and Chun-jae put sleeping pills in her drink, causing the 20-year-old sister-in-law to fall unconscious. Then she was raped and killed. After committing the crime, he used a wheelbarrow to move the victim to a mechanic shop 1 kilometer away from home. 5 days later, Lee Chun-jae was arrested by police. In the first trial and appeal, he was sentenced to death, but it was later changed to life imprisonment. The court's reason was that he committed the crime out of anger rather than planning it beforehand. According to fellow inmates, although Lee Chun-jae had admitted to the murder, he always felt innocent and showed no remorse for that evil act. On October 2, 2019, police in South Gyeonggi Province announced Lee Chun-jae confessed to committing 14 murders, including the Hwaseong serial murders, as well as over 30 sexual assaults and attempted crimes. Notably, when Korean police investigated the serial murders, they had repeatedly identified that the perpetrator had blood type B. But after testing Lee's DNA, they discovered he had blood type O. We know that DNA testing technology now is very developed. So concluding Lee Chun-jae as the perpetrator is indisputable. Then why did Korean police previously identify it as blood type B? The first possibility is that the blood type changed from B to O, but this possibility is very low and doesn't fit the facts. The second possibility is that the conclusion of the perpetrator having blood type B was completely wrong. According to police data, in 1989, Lee was once considered a suspect, but because Lee's blood type was O, he was eliminated from the suspect list. Clearly, all evidence from the
Rõ
case
ràng là
was
tất
still
cả các bằng
kept,
chứng của vụ
but
án
why
vẫn được giữ
wasn't
lại,
DNA
nhưng tại
compared
sao
before
không so sánh
2019
DNA trước năm
and had to wait
2019
until
mà lại chờ đến năm
2019?
2019?
To this question,
Đối với câu hỏi này thì
police
cảnh sát đã
responded
phản
that
hồi
Korea
rằng
didn't
Hàn
have
Quốc
DNA
không có công nghệ DNA,
technology, so they
nên
had
họ
to
phải
seek
nhờ
help
sự
from
giúp đỡ
other
từ các
countries for
quốc gia khác
testing.
để kiểm tra.
Later, Korea gradually mastered DNA technology, but still wasn't perfect. Due to lack of experience, extracting DNA from evidence multiple times could damage them, and each DNA test was also very expensive. Later, DNA technology in Korea developed, but the case had passed 15 years, so they couldn't perform timely comparisons. Fortunately, this DNA comparison was successful. In mid-July 2019, the investigation team sent samples to the Korean National Institute of Forensic Sciences for testing. After extracting DNA from the evidence and comparing it with existing DNA databases, they discovered that Lee Chun-jae's DNA completely matched. But according to law, the case cannot be retried. However, by now, he would have to spend the rest of his life in prison anyway. What do you think about the cruel acts of this perverted perpetrator? Leave your opinions right in the comment section to discuss together. And before leaving, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to stay updated with the most classic cases on the Crime Channel.